greatest adventures that I got to experience in a very long time occurred on October 24, 2019, when I got to see Toronto for the very first time. And that was the first time that I left the United States since November 16, 1991, when I went to Tijuana. And the first time that I had been in Canada since August 3, 1974, when I was only 10 years old, and that was back in the days before I had any pubic hair. If that's not all, back in 1974, when I went into Canada, Richard Nixon was president. When I came back to the United States, Gerald Ford was president. And that's because Nixon resigned while I was in Canada, and I was hoping that during my most recent visit to Canada, that history would repeat itself. And I was hoping that when I returned to the United States, that Mike Pence would be president, but no such luck. Don't get me wrong, I know that Mike Pence is a piece of shit, but it would be a slight improvement over the orange piece of shit that we have now. Before crossing into Canada, I spent the night on October 23 in Flint, Michigan, and I did not feel safe there. There were a lot of obnoxious people running around all night, and I had to make sure that I took all my valuables into my room, and I had to make sure that I stayed in my room by going out as little as possible. And I was checking out the next morning. A woman was in the lobby making a reservation, and she asked the clerk, "Do you recommend this place?" And she responded by saying, "Do you want my honest opinion?" "No." She then mentioned that she was planning on bringing her gun. Now, because hotels are such money-grubbing scumfucks with such horrible rates, I had no choice but to stay in Flint, Michigan. But I will say this, I still found Flint, Michigan to be nicer than Florida. And I was only about an hour away from the Canadian border, but it took about 2 hours to get there because I had to stop to hide some things before crossing the border. And I had to get my passport ready. And my fucking anxiety was so bad because I was so afraid that my name would be on some shit list and they wouldn't let me in. But when I got to the gate, I had to show the guy my passport, and he asked me a couple of questions, like he wanted to know how long I was planning on staying in Canada, where I was going, and why I was going to Toronto, and then I was in. What a relief. And the speed limit in Canada is 110. That is 110 kilometers per hour. And the very first song that I heard after getting into Canada was Imagine by John Lennon, and I remember something that Jesse Ventura said. You don't know about the shit that is going on in this country until you leave it. Because when you go to another country, you are on the outside looking in. And I noticed that there were a lot less billboards and advertising in Canada, and far fewer radio stations run by Bible-thumping assholes trying to proselytize people and converting them to their religious beliefs. And then things started to turn to shit. I noticed that my cell phone didn't work, and I found out that my cell phone service doesn't cover Canada. That fucking sucks and blows. And if that's not all, I stayed about 50 kilometers from Toronto, and I couldn't make any phone calls from the hotel because that was not considered a local call. It's a good thing I took my Magic Jack with me, because that was the only way I was able to make phone calls. And I spent my visit to Toronto riding trains and making videos while riding trains. And I made videos while riding trains because trains are fucking cool. And I made videos while riding the streetcars while I was in Toronto. And I said what was on my mind while I was riding the streetcar. And I went on to say that I don't know if I'll ever get a chance to go back to Toronto again. And some woman said, "Hallelujah." Was that a coincidence, or did she say that because she's a fucking cunt? I suspect the latter. I went to CN Tower, and I went to Woody's, which is a club in the Church Street area, and it was only 5 days before Halloween, so I took my ghost that lights up and shakes. Woo! And I went to the Poop Cafe, which is where they serve ice cream that is shaped like turds. And it's served in bowls that look like toilets. And it was actually more difficult getting back into the USSA than getting into Canada, as they have cameras that scan your car, and they were very rude to me, and it was similar to George Orwell's 1984. But I'm back in the USSA. You don't know how lucky you are, boys. Back in the USSA. And because my experience in Canada was so interesting, I think it's important to say this. God bless Canada. And I think that I will be going back to Toronto in a few more years after all. Hallelujah.